Hello, and welcome to another episode of Schlock Tactics, the movie podcast where we believe badder is better and aim to review their aging action heroes so that you don't have to. My name is Ash, and I'm joined once again by Mark. Oh, hi, Mark.
Good evening.
In case you missed the last episode, it was a very special episode, the first time we'd ever had guests in the studio. We were joined by the band Destroy the Beast, Find the Baby, and fellow movie reviewer, What a Ranker. So we reviewed Willow and Waterworld. Strange combination there, but go back and listen to the show, you'll find out why we paired those two films together. Today we are back to business as usual here with me and Mark, and we are reviewing two films which pit two of the biggest action heroes of all time head to head in 1993. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. Now the timing of this obviously coincides with this year, in which we've seen a brand new Terminator film and a brand new Rambo film as well. So they're still at it in 2019. They were at it in 1993, the two juggernauts of action movies, with Last Action Hero from 93 and Demolition Man from 93. First of these two is Last Action Hero. Very ahead of its time. It's actually a cult film now, even though it was considered a bit of a flop at the time. One of my favourite Arnold Schwarzenegger films, for sure. Both of these movies were in the old VHS collection that we talk about every week. I probably, even though I wouldn't have understood a good 60% of the gags as an 8-year-old, it was still one of my favourite Arnie films. So the idea of Last Action Hero is very ambitious. It is that Arnold Schwarzenegger plays an action movie hero character that exists in an action movie world, whilst we are sort of in the shoes of a character called Danny, who's a little boy who exists in our world. So through Danny, we are able to go into this fictional action movie world where everything must follow the rules of action movies and must be contained within that, and all sorts of stereotypes and cliches are sort of sent up. So it's quite complicated. Very complicated, probably for 80% of the audience that saw this were like, what the fuck is going on?
Schwarzenegger goes Inception.
Goes, yeah, postmodern, goes meta, a good few years before Scream made that sort of a thing. It is 2 hours and 10 minutes long, so it is also on Netflix as well. So if you've got 2 hours and 10 minutes to sort of scratch your head, then go check it out. Directed by John McTiernan, famously directed Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and also Die Hard. So he's a guy that knows his action movie onions. A good guy to go to. And the script had a couple of writers and a couple of people who have story credits, so it's one of those kind of worked over scripts, but the guy that did the rewrite was Shane Black, wrote the Lethal Weapon film, so he also knows sort of action movie tropes and how to sort of send them up and sort of manipulate them. So good personnel here, and obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger had been the biggest action movie hero for the last 10 years prior to this, so all the pieces are in place here. So the film opens up with a hostage situation, a little boy being held hostage on the roof by this character called the Ripper. You get this stereotypical angry police chief, this black guy who I'm sure I've seen in other films doing this exact same character. Is very good. And then enter Jack Slater, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in this film, stepping sort of across many taxis. You see his snakeskin boots first, then his blue jeans, his massive belt buckle, his tan leather jacket. It's an iconic look. I had the action figure, the Jack Slater action figure when I was a kid. And he's going to march in there and sort it all out. But he's intercepted on the way by Tina Turner. There you go. We don't know why.
Is that her?
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Tina Turner, not as herself, as most people are in these films.
Yeah.
But merely playing, I think, the mayor or the chief of police or something like that. She tries to stop him, but he says, Tina Turner, what the fuck are you doing in this film? Get out of my way. In the first 20 seconds as well. So, like we say, Jack Slater is an action hero pastiche. He's just sending up everything that Arnold Schwarzenegger previously portrayed. He doesn't play by anyone's rules. He's out of control. He's got one-liners, bad puns. He's excessively violent, obviously. We get a great Arnie pun in the first sort of 2 minutes. Hey, do you want to be a farmer? Kicks him in the balls. There's a couple of acres. which took me years to understand. We go up to the roof and there is the Ripper, who is this quite scary sort of character, sort of deformed. He's got like a raincoat on and a really like scary looking axe, portrayed by brilliant character actor Tom Noonan. He's Jack Slater's sort of arch nemesis in the fictional Jack Slater films. Tells Jack Slater to give over all of his guns, so he just empties like about 15 or 20 guns out of his jacket, his jeans.
He gives over like one gun at first, and he's like, well, that's not the only one, is it? He just gets rid of so many more.
Sets the tone really nicely. And then as the Ripper throws his axe towards the screen, it all goes a bit fuzzy and sort of washed out, and it feels like you're watching a pirated cam film. But then it pulls back and it reveals that this is just a film. And it's being watched by Danny, our character here. We have a few returners in this episode. This is our first returner, the Danny character, played by a kid called Austin. He did actually briefly pop up in The Lawnmower Man.
Wow, I don't remember that.
No.
That was probably over a year ago.
That was our virtual reality nightmare episode. You can check it out in the archives. Danny Madigan, just an ordinary New York kid who loves action movies. He was all of us in '93. You know? The guy that runs the cinema is called Nick. People may also recognise this actor. He played Dracula sort of character in Gremlins 2. People have studied that film as much as I have. And he was also in John Carpenter's Christine, which I watched recently, so I recognised him as well. He's a bit of a veteran. He's the lovable sort of cinema owner who lets Danny come and watch films when actually he should be in school. And he says, well, if you come at midnight tonight, I've got the exclusive Jack Slater 4 reel. No one's even seen it yet. It's the brand new Jack Slater film, and come and watch it before anyone else. So the whole day in school, Danny's imagination is running wild. So we get this great scene where he's meant to be studying Shakespeare in class, and the teacher's talking about Hamlet. And we briefly see Laurence Olivier playing Hamlet, but then, because this is Danny's imagination, he reimagines it as Jack Slater or Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Hamlet. And it's this great little, like, 2 minutes, but it's all gold. It's like him throwing skulls at enemies, to be or not to be, and then an explosion.
Not to be.
No, not to be. Loads of like Shakespearean quotes, Arnie-fied, which are great. Walking through this castle and getting his Uzi out and dispatching all of these like Danish soldiers is fantastic. Just look that bit up on YouTube if you can't be asked for the 2 hours 10 minutes. That's really good, and you get it really early on. We get like some quick backstory about Danny's mum's single parent, widowed. They're living in a crappy apartment in New York. They actually end up getting robbed while his mum's at work. So he's got a bit of a shit life. So that's why he escapes to the cinema, escape from reality, that sort of thing.
He gets handcuffed by some violent robber.
Yeah, someone comes in to rob him while his mum's out, and then the burglar is annoyed that he hasn't got anything of value in his house. What's up with this crappy TV? This crappy VHS? Well, you got no good stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. Why don't you fucking go somewhere else then?
I'm a kid.
Yeah, I'm a really poor kid with a single parent. You know. So there you go. It just shows you how he's got a shit life and he wants to escape to the movies / into the movies. So he does go to the midnight screening here, and it gives him this magic ticket that was something to do with Harry Houdini, something like that. And he starts watching Jack Slater 4 opens up, and we get the Megadeth playing the intro music here. It's pretty cheesy action movie sort of open.
Angry Again, if you want to check out what song it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It's not on any of their albums.
Really? It's for this soundtrack?
Yeah.
As is the AC/DC song Big Gun, which was written specifically for this film as well.
Which you can blatantly tell is AC/DC, because it couldn't be anyone else.
It couldn't be, no. Reliable. They're very reliable. Yeah. That sort of stuff. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger probably likes this sort of music. It's quite American.
Yeah.
Testosterone American.
US flag.
Yeah, it is. So, yeah, we're plunged into Jack Slater 4. You get this mob boss called Vivaldi, who's sort of torturing someone on his mansion balcony. And then you're introduced to the villain, the great villain of the film, Benedict, played by the great Charles Dance. who I don't think has been on the show before. I'm a little bit surprised because he's done some shit. But Charles Dance, legendary sort of English actor here, playing this Benedict character. And I also had the action figure of this character as well. So I had the Jack Slater action figure and I had the Benedict action figure. And I think they're quite unique looking, both of them. The Benedict character has this white linen suit that he wears, has these awful painted on like tribal tattoos coming up out of his collar, and of course the glass eye, which is his trademark here. I want to say that the action figure you could change the eye, but that doesn't sound right for a kid's toy, so probably you couldn't, but it would have been good if you could. He changes his glass eye throughout the films. I think it's a great character, well thought out visually. We cut to Jack Slater crashing a drug bust at his favourite second cousin's house. And there's a great bit where he finds his cousin tied up and finds like some playing cards inside like the ropes. And the one on the top says 5. And then he looks at the next one and it says 4. And the next one says 3. It's a bomb! And he gets to like 2 and he goes, "It's a bomb! It's a bomb!" So now another great like send up of action movie stuff, and the house explodes massively. It blows this old black policeman into the tree. He's just got time to say 2 days to retirement. It's so thick and fast. You've got to pay attention to these guys. It's like Airplane. It's like a gag every 3 seconds. Maybe. It's great. This leads to a car chase. Arnie getting chased in a convertible by some goons. And it's at this point that he throws sort of a stack of dynamite towards the screen, and it comes right out of the screen and into the cinema where Danny is sitting. So it's like breaking the fourth wall. Yeah. And this blows up and ends up blowing Danny into the film. So he ends up in the backseat of the convertible. And he's obviously a bit confused because Jack Slater, a fictional character, is driving him. There is an appearance here from legendary henchman Al Long. Henchman in lots of bad films. I think he's popped up. He's definitely popped up in a film we've done before. I can't remember which one. Probably Johnny Mnemonic, maybe.
We must have covered him by now.
He has. I know he has popped up. But he gets a great little segment here where he's chasing him, and Arnie blows up an ice cream truck, which he just points a gun at it and shoots it, and it explodes massively, like it's full of dynamite, and it shoots an ice cream cone into the back of his head, immediately killing him. And Arnie's just got time to say, "Ice that guy." Thick and fast, yeah. Jack is telling Danny that, don't worry, you're still alive. You'll grow up to discover all things like shaving, divorce, and premature ejaculation.
Yeah, acne, shaving, premature ejaculation in your first divorce.
It's a divorce.
Somewhere around here is when you very briefly see the Terminator / policeman from Terminator 2.
Robert Patrick,
yes.
T-1000, yeah. It's just as you're coming into the police station here. This is where most of the cameos in this film are.
Yeah.
He walks past the T-1000 and Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct. You get Cartoon Cat that's voiced by Danny DeVito, which again tells you that you're in a movie, perhaps a Roger Rabbit reference, I would say. There's this great gag where your ex-wife is on line 1 and he just puts a dictaphone down next to the receiver with her going, and his dictaphone going, "Yeah, sure, I know, sure." Get the angry police chief again, just screaming, just random stuff. And he says that Danny and Jack are now going to be partners. One of the top gags in this film, and I put the picture out on our social media yesterday. Danny wants to prove that this is a movie, so he takes Jack Slater into the Blockbuster video store, and he's expecting to find some other Schwarzenegger films, but he finds a cutout of Terminator 2, and it's Sylvester Stallone as the Terminator.
That was you, or something like that.
Yeah, but no, wait, this can't be right. And Arnie's like, "What are you talking about? he's great in that film. You know, sort of playing on this rivalry that they did have, obviously, around that time. But
Yeah.
So it's around this time that Danny's trying to explain that, no, you're not Jack Slater, you're an actor called Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he gets it wrong when he repeats it and says, Arnold Braunschweiger, which apparently is a type of sausage in Austria.
Right.
I read, yeah.
That's good research.
Yeah. But obviously Danny has seen the opening scene where his information is revealed that the Vivaldi mob is not really going to unite with this other mob. It's just a ruse. And Danny is the one that knows this because he has obviously watched it on screen. So they go to the Vivaldi mansion and Benedict is there. He's got a different eye. I think he's got a smiley face. Have a nice day eye. We're then introduced to Jack Slater's young daughter, Whitney. And this is another returner, a very quick returner. This is Bridget Wilson Sampras, who portrayed Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat just 2 episodes ago. We talked about it.
I should have recognised that one.
Yeah, she's not in this film too much, but she does do some Sonya Blade type kung fu kicking, which should have been a giveaway. Well, this came out before Mortal Kombat, so perhaps she impressed here with her moves that she got picked up for that film. But then Benedict is able to get to them, and he interrogates Whitney and Danny while Arnie is out doing something. I can't even remember what he's doing. He's gone out for a drive, and his daughter and his new partner are being interrogated. There's quite a good gag here where Danny says, if you touch a hair on her head, so he's going, wait a minute, and then he takes the hair from her head and breaks it in front of his. I like this about this film. It's almost like a Family Guy type dynamic where there'll be a gag and then it'll be actually performed. You know, there's no such thing as a metaphor. You want it, we're going to do it, you know. But yeah, there's some Whitney kung fu here. Arnie comes crashing through the glass ceiling. There's quite a lot of making henchmen shoot each other in this bit. So he lands in between 2 henchmen and just grabs both their guns and makes them like shoot each other. And then later on in the scene, he grabs like an exposed bit of wire and makes it touch a henchman sitting in a chair so that his gun goes off and shoots. I mean, that's quite labour intensive and depends on quite a few factors.
I'm not sure if it's scientifically accurate.
I mean, it's really the long way around. This is like what? Arnie's 8th or 9th action film. We've got to get creative here. And you can't say it's not creative. There's sort of some chasing here. Slater chases Benedict. Danny chases Slater. He's on a bicycle, which of course allows them to do an E.T. gag where he goes flying over the moon. But Benedict ends up getting the half of the magic ticket off of Danny, which is quite important because he is now theoretically able to come to our world. But he leaves his eye behind in Whitney's apartment, and it's one of those exploding glass eyes, unfortunately. So it blows the whole...
one of those damn exploding glass eyes.
Blows the whole house sky high, and apparently this shot of this building exploding was not even from this film. It was from Lethal Weapon. So Shane Black had just borrowed it from someone else. Yeah. Right. Arnie gets fired, of course. Slater gets fired for being a liability. A rogue element, I want your badge, this happens in both these films, actually. It is a cliche. At least this film knows it's a cliche. He goes back to his sad, bachelor apartment and shoots through the walk-in closet before opening the door and revealing, a guy in a balaclava. And Danny says, why is that guy in your wardrobe? He's always in the wardrobe, which is good. And it's one of these things where he opens the wardrobe and it's just 10 pairs of snakeskin boots, 10 pairs of leather jacket, 10 of the same gun. That great trope as well. It's always funny. Benedict at this point realises that he can actually go to another world, so he doesn't need Vivaldi anymore, so he shoots him. There's a weird little bit where he does a monologue to the camera, which is sort of stage acting esque, He sort of tells us what's going to happen next. He's like, now I've got the magic ticket, I will be going to the other world, and all this. If God was a villain, he'd be me, something. So here is a villain now perfectly aware that he is a movie villain or a panto villain, and he has realised that we are watching him in a film, so he is talking to us. So postmodern. Yeah, it's great. He ends up coming into our world, into New York City. Slater and Danny sort of follow him through. It's sort of a bit of a turning point here in the film, because the film's already been on for probably about an hour and 40 minutes at this point. You sort of feel like they could have wrapped it up around here, but they choose not to, and they choose to come back into our world. Apparently the original script was all set inside a fictional movie that knew it was a fictional movie, and they did not do that. So it's one of the rewriting things and the disagreements that the different writers had, and they felt that there should be a part where the characters come into our world. And I feel like this is maybe the only weak point of the film, because when it comes into our world, it sort of doesn't work quite as well, I don't think. Maybe it's just all the bloody celebrity cameos, one every sort of 2 minutes, bogging it down a little bit. It's at this point Slater realises he is fictional, because he sees a massive poster that says Arnold Schwarzenegger is Jack Slater. He's like, Arnold Braunschweiger? And he realises that now he's in the real world. He feels pain like a normal person. Things don't explode. So there's a bit where he shoots the back of a taxi like 3 or 4 times into the boot, and he's like, "What the fuck? should explode, shouldn't it?" And it doesn't. You know,
why hasn't it flown into the air in fire
like the ice cream van? Yeah. But then what I do like is conversely, where Jack Slater realizes he's sort of powerless, Benedict realizes that actually he can now do anything he wants, and there are actually less rules for the villain out of the movie than there were in the movie. So he goes and shoots some mechanic, and there are no sirens, and nobody screams, and nobody does anything. So he shouts really loudly, "I shot somebody! I did it on purpose! I wanted to confess to murder!" And there's nothing happens. So he's like, right, okay, cool. So it's sort of a little social commentary on how depraved our world and our civilization is. A supervillain actually can do quite well here, better than he could within the predetermined confines of an action movie. Yeah. I quite like that element. Recruits the Ripper as well. I suppose he had to bring him out of a film as well, since he doesn't exist in our world. He's a fictional character, so he has to bring him out from Jack Slater 3, presumably. Yeah. So now the Ripper is now in our world as well. Here we get one of the most famous quotes of the film, with Arnie comes out with "rubber baby buggy bumpers." Yay. You didn't know I was going to say that. That's his attempt to still disprove that he's a fictional character. Now this gets really complicated and messy, because we're at the premiere of Jack Slater 4 in our world, which stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as Jack Slater. So just as you would expect, the real-life character Arnold Schwarzenegger arrives with his real-life wife and lots of real-life actors surrounding him. James Belushi, Jean-Claude Van Damme pops up briefly, Little Richard for some reason, and even Tom Noonan, who plays the Ripper. So we have a world now where the characters and the actors who portray the characters exist, not just in the same universe, but in the same theatre, the same place. So it gets really complicated, but still really clever. It's still ambitious. There's like a little gag where his wife says, "Please don't mention the restaurants. Don't plug the restaurants," which is the Planet Hollywood restaurants that Arnie and Sly were both heavily invested in and would not shut up about in the early 90s, along with Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. So we get the Ripper character arrive at the premiere, and the journalists are like, "Oh, how wonderful! It's the character of the Ripper from Jack Slater 3. Ooh, he's scary." And then about 2 minutes later, the actor Tom Noonan turns up in his tuxedo, not dressed up like his character, and they're like, "Oh, how did you get out of costume so quickly?" And he's like, "What?" It gets mad in a good way. There's all this sort of, the Ripper tries to assassinate. It seems like they're trying to kill Arnold Schwarzenegger rather than Jack Slater at one point. Maybe the theory being that if he doesn't exist, then Jack Slater can't exist. Yeah. they don't really explain it because it's gone so mad. But
I think I was getting a little bit confused at this point.
Who's who? Who's who?
Yeah.
But it culminates with the Ripper on the roof again, but with Danny this time instead of the kid from the beginning of the movie, which was Jack Slater's son, being able to electrocute the Ripper in quite a clever way. Again, those exposed wires, he just dips them in the water, and because it's raining, it electrocutes the Ripper. But then, of course, there's still Benedict, so Benedict turns up and does something that he does throughout the film, which is always really cool. Just really slowly extends his arm with a gun at the end, so the barrel is like right near the camera and looks like it's 20 foot long. But he does it constantly, and it's really good. He's like a hitman character. It's cool. And he starts to talk about some interesting stuff, such as with this ticket, obviously I brought the Ripper through from the Jack Slater films, but I could go and get Dracula, King Kong, all these sorts of characters. I could bring all of these characters out, and I would love to see the sequel where that happens, just a mashup. I suppose that's what Ready Player One was in a way. But yeah, this interesting sort of villain monologue, which caps off with the great line, "Here, the bad guys can win." A prelude to him shooting Jack in the chest, presumably killing him. And that's the sort of interesting concept, is that could not happen in an action movie, but it could happen in reality, the reality that we're in. So it's all interesting stuff. But he's able to shoot him in the eye, which explodes because he has the exploding eyes, as we've established. And then it goes on for still about another 10 minutes with this mad subplot where someone's watching The Seventh Seal, the Ingmar Bergman film, and Death, the Grim Reaper, emerges from that film into our world, played by Ian McKellen, and just starts wandering around New York in a sort of quite a loose end, quite a random thing to introduce about 10 minutes before the end of the film. And the idea is that he's not coming for Jack Slater, so it's fine. Danny's able to use the ticket to return Jack Slater to his rightful universe, and that's it. So 2 hours and 10 minutes, 83 kills.
Wow. That's
Last Action Hero from 1993. What were your overall thoughts of this film?
It's a very entertaining film. Like you said, very meta. It's a bunch of films within a film. It's like tons of cliche kind of action tropes used again and again. They stuck a load of good one-liners in. They obviously just wanted to get the best of Arnie into like every scene. How much Arnie can you cram into one film, really? And
kind of when you watch the films he did after this, it's kind of a bit dull.
Yeah.
'Cause once you've done this, you can't really go back again.
It's like they exhausted him with this film.
It was like the culmination of the previous 10 years. It's like, where do you really go from here?
Yeah, it's really good. It's good fun. It's not really that serious or anything. It's got that kind of appeal to it, like a kid being involved in the action film with his favourite action star. And I can imagine if you watch this as a kid, you kind of you're like, oh, I wish I was that kid. Kind of, you kind of vicariously live that kind of.
Because that's the kind of subplot with that character, and it is a bit of a cliche, but like. The kid with the sort of shitty life will escape into movies, into video games, into books. That's kind of what art does, isn't it? It's something you can escape from reality with, and it does it very literally, which, as you say, is relatable for any kid, but especially like a kid who is obsessed with movies or video games, whatever it might be, to go into that world. How cool would that be?
This escapism becomes his life. And,
it's a good idea.
To experience it.
And it's cool.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Weird that this is considered one of the worst Arnold Schwarzenegger films, and it was obviously a big shock to me when I saw this pre-internet in '93. It was tough before the internet to know that a film was popular or unpopular. You just made your own mind up, and I thought it was fucking brilliant.
If anyone at school had seen it, it was popular.
And then I eventually learned that this was considered like not that great, and I was like, what do you mean? Like it's so clever, so ambitious, so ahead of its time, and now it is a cult film for sure. You know? It's got 36% rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, which is... and what I really resent is that that's the same score that Junior got.
Oh dear.
And for me, I mean, if you're talking...
That's a film we'll never do.
No, well, when I thought of I mean, obviously, we have to walk a thin line on this show between films that are the really terrible, but films that also we would enjoy watching, and they'd be bad, you know. If I was going to pick the worst Arnold Schwarzenegger film, I would pick Junior. No doubt about it. And maybe Twins I would put below this
Surely
as well.
one of his more modern films.
I guess, but you know, if we're going for that first Arnie run, it's definitely Junior. So I can't believe this has got the same score. But yeah, I think this film is so clever, so ahead of its time. A bit too long, a bit bloated. I think at times it really threatens to collapse under its postmodernness.
It gets quite complicated at the end, especially. I kind of sort of not zoned out, but I kind of sort of relaxed a bit too much for a few minutes, and I was like, "What's going on again?"
Rarely does this genre become so complex like this. It's usually, you know, Commando. Arnie shoots people for 90 minutes. Henchman, mini boss, henchman, a final boss. Different guns, you know, grenades, like, but obviously he'd done that for 10 years, so he found this script really appealing in that it really satirised and sent up the sort of tropes that he was probably getting pretty sick of by this point. So I think it's fantastic. I can't believe it's 36% rotten. I can't believe that anyone thinks this is a bad film. It's great, but I'm glad it is considered so, because then we can talk about it. So that's Last Action Hero from 1993. And so we continue now to talk about Demolition Man from 1993. So this is Sylvester Stallone's big budget action blockbuster of the same year. Came out a little bit later in the year, so Last Action Hero had already been brutalised at the box office by Jurassic Park, which broke every sort of record there was in 93, but still Demolition Man was going to come out in October-ish, I think, here. Directed by a guy called Marco Brambilla, who I've never heard of, and this is pretty much his only major credit. Obviously Sylvester Stallone, just the same as Arnold Schwarzenegger, had been a big action star for all of the 80s. The Rocky franchise was starting to go downhill, or had gone downhill by this point. They'd done 5, hadn't they, which was not great.
Yeah, Stallone sort of hit the big time before Arnie. He was sort of mid-70s.
Rocky 78, 79. So yeah, he did make it big first, and actually didn't. Rocky's not even an action film. Certainly not the first one. It's just sport. It's like quite a good film, isn't it? And even the first Rambo was quite a proper film. By 1993, he had completely bled the Rocky franchise dry, and the Rambo franchise, Rambo 3, is ridiculous.
I've not seen that one.
No, it's bad. Rocky 5, you've told me, is
Rocky
not
5
great.
Is bad,
So that's all his franchise. He did the terrible arm wrestling film called Over the Top. He did a wonderful film called Tango and Cash, which is actually also rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. So I was angry to find out. Kurt Russell, Sylvester Stallone, silly action movie from the late 80s. But here we are in 93. His stock is starting to wane also. The film opens actually in Los Angeles, the year 1996. Now,
3 years ahead.
Why bother setting the film 3 years in the future, or at least the first portion? I don't understand that. Even in 1996, it appears to be a little bit dystopian. So just in 3 years' time, there'll be lots of things on fire and lots of terrorists and criminals. Yeah. There's another hostage situation, very similar, open to Last Action Hero. Simon Phoenix, the master criminal, has hijacked a bus and has got all these people held hostage. So they send in John Spartan, the best damn cop on the force, although he's a bit of a loose cannon. John Spartan is Sylvester Stallone. Simon Phoenix, played by Wesley Snipes, sort of on the rise here as a bit of an action star, a legitimate black belt in judo or karate, maybe. Lots of shooting straight away, which is pretty good. This film actually has 72 kills, 10 less than Last Action Hero. Must have been a bit more dialogue, maybe.
I guess Last Action Hero is longer.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that'll be it. So John Spartan goes wading in here, confronts Simon Phoenix, and they just blows the whole fucking building up. This was a real demolition. that was filmed. Yeah, something in Louisville or Louisiana maybe. Something that need some old car factory that needed to be demolished anyway. So they the film studio film it, and they also ran a competition on MTV. So that a lucky viewer could press the button that blew up the building, which sounds
an amazing prize.
That sounds pretty cool. Yeah. I wonder where that person is now. It would have been cool for them to have a cameo as well.
Were they in the credits?
Possibly. They could have been one of the Mad Max people. So real demolition here. But then after the whole building's blown up, what do you know? We get an angry police chief chewing out John Spat.
What a surprise!
And then it's wow, yeah, you blew up this whole building. What your reliability? And he's like, well, it was the only way to stop him. And then a fireman says, "There's a body here. There's a body. There's bodies everywhere. No!" So it turns out that the hostages were in the building when John Spartan caused it to explode. So he's going to be done for involuntary manslaughter. Simon Phoenix presumably for something similar, being a bad criminal. And but what they do here in the distant future, 1996, they don't put you in a regular prison. They freeze you cryogenically. And apparently the writer of this film was genuinely inspired by Walt Disney's Frozen Head. To do this. So I think it was a bit of a hot topic in the 90s, wasn't it? I seem to remember lots of playground talk about Walt Disney and would you be cryogenically frozen if you could be, that sort of thing. So they're on the pulse here a little bit, and he is sentenced to be frozen for 70 years. However, he is defrosted in 2032, which is where the bulk of the film takes place. He is defrosted by none other than Lenina Huxley, played by Sandra Bullock, who is also on the rise here. I think she'd done a few sort of rom-coms and stuff like that, but she did this here. 93, she would do Speed the next year.
Yeah, I guess she was relatively young.
So yeah, pretty young, pretty much on the rise. Now, it's worth noting, and I saw this film a lot when I had the VHS as a kid, but since then I have read what is now one of my favourite books, Brave New World, by Aldous Huxley, and I had no idea, but this film is largely inspired by that book and is a loose adaptation of that book. So she takes her name obviously from Aldous Huxley, but also Lenina is the name of the main character in the book. And the book, for listeners who don't know, it's basically like a dystopian, almost like 1984, a dystopian book, except it's not authoritarian right wing. It's a really apathetic future where everything has become fine and utopian and peaceful and there are no problems anymore, but that's actually somehow more nightmarish than if it was a totalitarian government. So everyone's really like indifferent now to, and there's no, there's like in this film, there's no sort of excitement, there's no violence and sex. So yeah, everything's so easy now that everyone's become it's a complacent sort of apathetic utopia. So that's really the concept of Brave New World, and that's what they've taken from that book, although it's not any of the characters or the plot points, but it's that feeling of a very sanitized and apathetic dystopia, which is more unusual than the 1984 dystopia. That's the easier one to do in many ways, because it's just a boot stamping on a human face forever, as they say. This is a little harder to do, and they've taken the spirit of that book. So yeah, I would recommend that book if you want to know a bit more about where this sort of idea comes from. But there's a little bit of prescience here. Huxley is in a driverless car, a Google car. This is mysterious graffiti that pops up the ground and sprays, so we get this idea of a sort of a clandestine underground early on in the film. We get Rob Schneider here in the police station. I'm surprised he hasn't come up before now as well, actually. Perhaps we'll do some Juice Bigelow films one day. I would say this is probably the only proper film he's been in, proper big budget film.
He's been in a lot of trash, hasn't he?
All sorts of garbage. Yeah, he'll come up again. We'll come back to you, Rob Schneider. Don't go anywhere. The chief of police here is played by a guy called Bob Gunton. I think most people will recognise him from Shawshank Redemption. He's the warden.
The warden, yeah. That's my immediate recognition of him. Yeah,
that's his big role. And probably my favourite thing about this dystopian future is that you're not allowed to swear, but to the point where if you swear, no matter where you are, and this is something they're very consistent with throughout the film, whenever you swear, an alarm will go off, and a guy will come on and says, "You have violated the verbal morality statute and been fined 5 credits for doing so." And it's great because no matter where you are in the film, even if you're outside or it doesn't look like you're anywhere near one of them, it'll become quieter. Yeah. So you'll swear, and really far away you'll just hear, "You have been fined." So it's like you can't escape it. Wherever you are not allowed to swear, which I love it. It keeps coming back and it's great. So what happens is that Simon Phoenix has a routine parole that is suspiciously easily able to escape. He knows the password somehow to his restraints. He rips out the eyeball of the doctor and uses it for the retina scanner. I feel like I've seen this in other films, but this must be the first time I saw it. It's a good idea. And it's why we should not have retina scanners in the world. Take note. And he commits what is referred to as an MDK, a murder, death, kill, or a 187 in sort of LA police code. As well as the swearing machines, they're these little compliment machines. So a citizen is using this sort of what looks like a phone box, and he goes up to it and says, "I'm not feeling very good today." And the computer says, "You look great. You are a positive being, and you can do anything." It's, oh, great. And all the while, Simon Phoenix is having these sort of hallucinations, sort of flashes where it's just this voice saying, "Don't you have a job to do? Don't you have someone to kill? Friendly. Edgar Friendly." So he searches Edgar Friendly. We get the face of Dennis Leary popping up on the computer screen. Well-known American comic at the time. Sort of the new Bill Hicks after Bill Hicks died. Known for that sort of routine. He inexplicably plays the sort of underground rebel leader in this film. I really don't know why. But we start to get the idea that Simon Phoenix has been brainwashed and that he's been thought out for a reason. And he just sort of generally starts causing mayhem, starts fighting with the police. We see some of Wesley Snipes' martial arts skills. Apparently they had to tell him to slow down his punches as his limbs were being blurred on camera. He was too fast. So they had to ask him to do half-speed kung fu. We're introduced to the character of Dr. Cocteau, who is the sort of the saviour of San Angeles, as it's now called, which is like LA plus a few surrounding areas merged into one megalopolis, if you like. Yeah. He's played by Nigel Hawthorne, who is a sort of a British stage actor as well, I would say, and he's the proper actor in this film, the counterpart to Charles Dance. He was in The Madness of King George a year after this film, which is quite a big 90s film. His assistant is called Bob the Associate, who people might recognise from Beetlejuice. Very interesting bit of trivia. It's not mentioned in the film at all, but in the novelisation of the film, it is revealed that Bob is a eunuch and was castrated by Dr. Cocteau to, quote, stop him becoming too ambitious. So yeah, Bob the eunuch, Bob the associate. So, of course, the only solution to Simon Phoenix's problem is to defrost John Spartan, Sylvester Stallone, as that was how he was originally apprehended. So it makes perfect sense they'll defrost him again. Most people are against this, but Sandra Bullock is a big supporter. And it's while he's defrosting that she sort of gives a bit of Basil exposition here and explains the whole apathetic dystopia. So everything that is bad for you is now illegal. Cigarettes, meat, sports, sex, quite a long list actually, guns, lots of things.
Fuck.
And he's constantly being referred to as a caveman and a Neanderthal because he's from the way back in the 20th century, which I think they refer to it as being 36 years difference. That's not that long ago. No. Do we look at people from the early 80s and go, the savages? Not really, do we? So I guess they've had some sort of revolution in this 36 years that makes them look at people from the 90s as being savages. But that's the part that they sort of put him in. We get arguably the most famous part of this film, and what everyone knows, even if they haven't seen it, is the 3 seashells. So John Spartan goes to the toilet and comes back and says, "Oh, you don't have any toilet paper?" And they all start laughing. And go, "Oh, back in the 20th century, they used wads of paper." What? No.
He doesn't know how to use the seashells.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells. So, Mark, I will put it to you now, live on the air. How do you think that you use the 3 seashells?
I don't know.
Unfortunately, I read an excerpt of an interview with Sylvester Stallone where, I mean, if I was him, I don't think I would be answering that question. But apparently he did answer that question.
Okay.
And he didn't go graphic, but what he did say is that he imagined that 2 of the seashells were designed as a clamping device and 1 would be used as a scraping device. That still doesn't really answer the question, but maybe we don't need it to be answered.
No.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells.
Waterfall
is one of the enduring quotes from this film.
Yeah.
And he does have a unique way of getting around this, because he realises that the device that finds you if you swear. So he goes over and says, "You motherfucking dog fuck shit-eating motherfucker." He swears about 10 times, and then he has paper so he can go wipe his ass. Problem solved. I feel like the actual punchline to the gag, which is him swearing to get toilet paper, is often overshadowed because you're still trying to think, trying to work out what the fuck the 3 seashells are for. So I think the punchline always gets lost there, because you're like, what? Now, they do mention the only place that Simon Phoenix could get a gun would be in a museum. So that's where he goes. The Museum of the 20th Century. And they have guns there. They have a sort of excavation of a genuine street from the 1990s. Assistant in the museum, another famous quote from this film, asks Simon Phoenix, "What seems to be your boggle?" So he throws him through the glass and is able to access all of the guns. Mm-hmm. I think Wesley Snipes is really good in this. I really like the character of Simon Phoenix. I think he's quite a charismatic villain. Mm. He was 3rd in line to play this character. Actually, Sly was not the first choice for this film either. They originally wanted this film to be Steven Seagal versus Jean-Claude Van Damme.
That would have been quite fitting, actually.
Yeah, so Steven Seagal as John Spartan and JCVD as Simon Phoenix. Would have been fine, I think. They couldn't get him, so then Sly wanted to get one of his favourite action stars, Jackie Chan, to play Simon Phoenix, who I don't think would have been that good. No. So Wesley Snipes, the third choice, but I think he's really good as his character, and I think what makes the character as well is the costume design. Every scene he's got a really outlandish outfit on, like orange dungarees, or a jacket that's made of bits of tire and stuff like that. It's quite well thought out, sort of anarchist, chaotic sort of cartoon villain, and he's able to access, as he says, this is the future, where are all the laser guns? So he finds a gun called the magnetic accelerator, but he can't figure out how to use it for a little while. So they have a shootout. John Spartan and Simon Phoenix, they have a brawl in this excavated 90s street featuring a genuine car and a genuine fire hydrant and all this sort of stuff. Phoenix is able to escape and he confronts Cocteau, and it's at this time you realise that obviously Cocteau is the one responsible for releasing Simon Phoenix, and he's the one that brainwashed him. He's using him to kill Edgar Friendly, the leader of the resistance, because he's the only opposition to him. But Spartan is able to chase him off. Sandra Bullock says to Sylvester Stallone, "Not bad for a 74-year-old. Do you know how old Sylvester Stallone is right now?
74?
He will be 74 next July. So we're nearly there. We're nearly there, yeah. So the idea of it being laughable that a 74-year-old could be an action hero.
Yeah.
Now, it's at this time that I already knew this, but this is quite different because I mentioned to you that whenever the characters say Pizza Hut, they're not actually saying Pizza Hut. And they say Pizza Hut a lot. It's
Yeah.
obviously product placement. However, in the original theatrical cut and in the VHS I had, it's Taco Bell.
Ah.
Would you like to come to dinner with me at Taco Bell? Yes, Spartan, we'll go to dinner at Taco Bell with Cocteau. All of the stickers on the windows say Taco Bell. Yes, I can't wait to have a burrito at Taco Bell. But they realised after shooting the film that nowhere else in the world has Taco Bell apart from America. So they decided to overdub brand new dialogue to be Pizza Hut because everywhere has a Pizza Hut. So you can see the lips. You can see, and I know because I remember him in the police station saying, "Boy, I'd love to have a burrito when we go to Taco Bell." But there was change to, "Oh, I'd love a pizza at Pizza Hut." It just doesn't.
Before you even mentioned anything, I could see that they weren't saying that, and I was like, what the hell's going on here?
It doesn't fit because it's been dubbed in afterwards. So,
yeah,
I'd love to see you at Pizza Hut. So stupid and shit. Who cares if no one has a Taco Bell? Like, it's pretty obvious what it is. It's a Mexican restaurant.
Taco Bell kind of sounds cooler than pizza anyway.
Yeah.
I thought it would have gone better, really.
I mean, it was the first time I'd ever heard of Taco Bell was in this film, and now we're watching a version which has Pizza Hut. And the fucking stickers on the windows and the cars are clearly like superimposed, like video graphics over the top.
We paused it and we were like,
so fucking
terrible.
It's the most unrealistic thing about the future. So some of the clunkiest product placement I've ever heard of. Then he goes to Pizza Hut and he's served this fucking Heston Blumenthal looking like smear on a slate thing anyway. So he doesn't even eat pizza in the end.
What was the point of that whole...
He couldn't eat pizza because he was in fucking Taco Bell. But he's not eating a burrito either. It's fucking stupid. So stupid. There's also a great crossover here between the two films. Obviously, we mentioned Sylvester Stallone as the Terminator in Last Action Hero. In this film, Huxley mentions that she got him the disc he asked for from the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library. I believe he was an actor in your time. And she goes on this whole speech about how, of course, once upon a time, you weren't allowed to be the president if you weren't born in America, but they passed a law where naturalized citizens were able to become a president. And of course, 10 years after this film, Arnold Schwarzenegger did become the governor of California. And shortly after that, there was a law passed which said you could become the president if you were a naturalized American citizen. So the most prescient thing about this whole film was Arnold Schwarzenegger being able to not become president, but he could actually become president. He might become president.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, he's not getting any younger. He might need to get on that quickly.
Yeah.
But, so there you go. The Schwarzenegger Presidential Library, actually not that far from what would happen. All these sort of goons turn up outside the Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and start having a bit of a fight. They're referred to as scraps, these sort of renegade characters. Kind of an awkward one-liner here. It's not as snappy as some of the Arnie ones. Sylvester says, "You're going to regret this for the rest of your life, both seconds of it." And then he fights him for about another 20 seconds, and then kills him. I mean, I know it's not as snappy to say you're going to regret this for the next 23 seconds, but it's not accurate. It's not great. But then one of them drops a container of food with a crudely plastered Pizza Hut logo on it, which means that they're actually just hungry poor people. They're not criminals, and you get a bit of sympathy for the scraps, the underground resistance here. Pretty funny scene here where Huxley and Spartan go back to her place to, quote, have sex, and I think we could all see this coming if you hadn't seen this film before. What was going to happen? Sandra Bullock disappears, comes back in a nice little dressing gown, and opens a chest and puts what I can only describe as amateur boxing headgear on John Spartan, and puts the other one on her. And she's like, "Okay, just relax. We're going to start in a moment." He's like, "Okay." So he's just sitting there, and he closes his eyes, and he. I don't know how many actors there are who I could recognise who they are from a Ooh. Roger Moore and Sylvester Stallone may be the only two. But every time he closes his eyes, he gets a sort of a lucid flash of pleasure, of Sandra Bullock sort of going, ah. But then he's making these fucking noises like, ooh, ooh. And you get these crash zooms into his face the more he's like being pleasured. And he's just pulling these fucking stupid faces and doing these stupid, like, stereotypical sly grunts. Ooh, ooh. And ends up just taking off and says, look, can't we do it the old-fashioned way? She's like, you mean fluid transfer? Oh, God. And she again goes into, the fact that you can't have sex, you can't kiss, you can't have children unless you go into a lab and are artificially inseminated with a licensed fetus. Again, quite a Brave New World concept, sort of genetic engineering. Sly goes back into his apartment, and this is a completely fucking random bit where he's got a massive like TV screen on his wall, and he's trying to turn it on, and then a topless woman comes on.
She's like, oh my God, I'm so wrong number.
He's like, hi, Steve. Oh my God, wrong number. And he's just like, oh, what? Okay. It's presumably, I mean, I'm assuming as soon as the scene cut, he just furiously jacked it. He's presumably, I mean, they haven't shown him having a wank, but I mean, he's been cryogenically frozen for 36 years. Yeah. He's very nearly had sex. It's got to be an issue here. And he also discovers during this time that whilst he was in cryogenic stasis, they implanted some rehabilitation skills, and for him, that meant knitting. So he's able to knit Huxley a lovely jumper to apologise for trying to transfer fluid into her. It's one of those jumpers. That's probably a cake you can get for that as well.
I'm sorry, I tried to inseminate
you. Without the proper licence and paperwork.
Yeah.
What they do realise is that whereas Sly has had the knitting implant, Simon Phoenix has had the torture, murder, kung fu, hacking implant. So the better end of the deal, really. You can't knit your way out of this one. Sly confronts Cocteau on this and says, I think you released Phoenix. I think you turned him into a killer to sort of even the score with Edgar Friendly and the scraps. So this does lead to Spartan and Huxley and another policeman going down into the sewers, into the scraps sort of underground lair. They eat rat burgers. Dennis Leary goes on one of his trademark sort of rants that he would do during stand-up about how I want high cholesterol, I want to smoke cigars, I want to run through the streets covered in jello. This is like almost verbatim his No Cure for Cancer stand-up routine that he did in the 90s. I know the last episode we crowned an official Triple Crown winner in Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
But here in this episode, we have probably the most pathetic triple guest on the show here. Because we have here in this scene, and if I had not read it on IMDb Trivia, I would no way have spotted it. I had to pause it and strain my eyes.
There's no way I would have noticed.
Here we have, returning after we sort of discussed him in Biodome and sort of discussed him in Waterworld, the third appearance here from young Jack Black, who is playing Goon number 3 in this. And I think he played Goon number 4 in Waterworld and played one half of Tenacious D in Biodome. So it was a very long road to the top for Jack Black. I mean, how far does it go back? Like, we're going to see him in stuff in the 70s. Like,
yeah.
It just
should really check out his IMDb filmography.
I think this was around the same time that he starred in Neverending Story 3 as the bully. So there you go. But they start defrosting all of the cryocons, as they call them. Jeffrey Dahmer gets a shout out here.
Yeah.
I love that guy. I love that guy. I mean, I don't know what good he'd really be in this situation. He's quite a shy serial killer, I think you could say. I don't think he'd be any good in a fist fight against Sylvester Stallone, but there you go.
Bit out of place in an action film.
Yeah, I think he's a bit of a weedy bloke, isn't he? But yeah, Spartan and Phoenix have this quite cool fight in this quite cool set piece, no pun intended. It's a cryogenic frozen lab.
Yeah.
There's like this crane that picks up Spartan, and Phoenix is controlling it with a joystick, a la M. Bison. I don't know where he gets this fucking plasma gun, but he starts just shooting this insane gun that like shoots lightning across the room. Things are exploding, things are defrosting. It's all kicking off. And there's this great scene where, presumably in response to Terminator 2, Sly manages to cryogenically freeze Simon Phoenix, decapitates him, and then the body shatters into little pieces. So we've definitely seen this in Terminator 2, but it is cool.
It was still cool in it.
Everything explodes, and Spartan and Huxley seems like they have a bit of a fluid transfer of the mouth variety at the end, as you often do in films. And Edgar Friendly is going to work together with the police and create a better world for everyone, where there is some sex and violence, but also it's a safe, clean place to live in. Yeah. Possibly like what we have now. I don't know. Yeah. So there it is. Demolition Man, also from 1993. What were your overall thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. There's quite a lot of references to what the future would look like. This is sort of technology and what they would be doing and eating. And
always interesting to see what people think the future will be.
Yeah,
I know we're not in 2032 yet.
I'm not sure how serious they thought some of these ideas were, but
yeah, not too much. Yeah.
It's not quite as realistic as some other films.
You wouldn't think that this had been loosely adapted from a seminal science fiction book, would you? No.
But yeah, it's like good in it. Quite like Wesley Snipes' character as well, and yeah, there's more people I recognise than I thought. Like the guy who played the guy who was the warden in Shawshank, Sandra Bullock, obviously. And Bullock seemed to have like the most kind of stupid kind of lines about, I thought your life force had been prematurely terminated. Like, things like that.
Quite stock sci-fi stuff. Yeah. But believe it or not, this one actually 62% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh.
So whereas Last Action Hero was rotten, this one has got double that and is fresh.
That's quite hard to believe.
It's quite shocking. I mean, I really rinsed this VHS, when I was a kid. I really liked the futuristic setting. Really liked Simon Phoenix's character. I thought that was the best thing about the film. The whole sanitized future, the whole apathetic future. I mean, years and years before I read Brave New World, I thought that was kind of a much more interesting direction to go than the totalitarian, we're the government, we're gonna smash your face in sort of stuff. This is the other way, really. It's so utopia, it's dystopia. And I quite like that idea. The swearing machine, love it. The 3 seashells, amazing. These things have stuck in my mind for years. These mechanisms of the future in Demolition Man are just bizarre. And there's some quite good hand-to-hand stuff in this. Like Wesley Snipes is obviously pretty tasty with the martial arts, and that kind of shows. He does all sorts of cool Van Damme-esque kicks.
Yeah.
And like I say, it was meant to be Van Damme, so that's no surprise there.
Yeah.
He turned it down. I'm not sure what he was doing. Time Cop at this time, maybe. He was about to be Colonel Guile in Street Fighter. So.
Yeah, a year or two.
But as we said, he turned down Mortal Kombat at that time as well. So you kind of see Sly and Arnie on the wane, and really you see Jean-Claude as like becoming the biggest action star in the world in their place. Really, everyone wanted him, not them anymore, which is an interesting situation to be in. And also Bruce Willis was in that kind of scenario as well. He was becoming, perhaps people wanted a slightly more lifelike action hero. Whereas in the 80s you want brick shithouse Arnold Schwarzenegger. In the 90s they wanted something a little bit more down to earth, I think, and that's what you start to see here. But Demolition Man, an old favourite of mine as well. No way it's 62% fresh. It's one of the better Sylvester Stallone movies, certainly of the 90s. Mark, if you had to cryogenically freeze one of these films so that it would not be seen again, or if you could magically enter one of these films and live that film, which one would you freeze forever, and which one would you escape into?
I would.
That's pretty loaded.
Yeah.
You don't be swayed by the question. Yeah.
I would freeze Demolition Man, and I would live in Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
And
you'd have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd seen Last Action Hero before. I hadn't seen Demolition Man. Quite enjoyed it, but Last Action Hero, I don't know. Like, I do like Stallone. He's great, but Arnie's like one of the best actors ever. Or not one of the best, but certainly one of the most entertaining.
Yeah.
And one of my favourite.
More fun than Sly.
Yeah. He's brings me so much more joy. I kind of like the whole meta thing that we've talked about, the whole going into an action movie and is this real now, and this kid getting to like live out an action film. I think it's quite well done. Demolition Man was it was kind of futuristic, but it was kind of not as original as Last Action.
That's true. Yeah,
I think
it could have been any sci-fi action film. Really. Yeah,
it wasn't done as well as other futuristic films, which is why it's a schlocky movie, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, Last Action Hero. I thought it had more good one-liners. It had more cheesy action and things like that. And
yeah, I agree. As you can probably imagine. Yeah, absolutely. Legendary film, Last Action Hero. I can't believe that the score it's got on Rotten Tomatoes makes me so angry. If people haven't seen it, I really recommend you go see it. And there's a reason why it's become a cult film now, is because people were not ready for this in 1993. They'd only just had the big budget action blockbuster film for like the previous 10 years before this. I think perhaps people weren't ready for Arnold Schwarzenegger to sort of tear down all of the things that he built up, and they were like, whoa, what is this? Like, this is really challenging what we were expecting. Nobody could have been expecting this in 93. It must have blown people's minds, but possibly not in the way that they were intending. But looking back on it now, it's so clever, so ahead of its time. You talk about things like Scream, Cabin in the Woods, mostly horror, do the postmodern thing, but this is a very interesting example of action movies doing it as well. And it works just as well. Charles Dance, I think, is brilliant as the villain. And like you say, Arnie is Arnie, even in the films that aren't as good. Even in Junior, he's still Arnie. He's still funny and still charming.
He's got good lines in pretty much all of his old films.
Yeah, you can squeeze something out of every Arnie film. I think you can find something to like. But in this, it's just so ambitious, so clever. This is definitely the better good movie that some people say is bad. Interestingly enough, obviously, I guess if we're going by box office, both of them made money, of course. But both failed to meet their expected results, whatever they were, I don't know. Obviously, critically, Last Action Hero came out on the losing end, with Demolition Man actually getting a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. However, in the battle of 2019, Terminator Dark Fate, believe it or not, is 71% fresh. And Rambo Last Blood, 27% rotten.
Ooh.
So,
wow.
I guess nobody does want to see a 74-year-old Sylvester Stallone running around. So yeah, I guess Arnie had the last laugh here. I mean, he took 10 years off to be a governor. Maybe people got sick of Sly, or are sick of Sly and sick of the Rambo franchise. But I mean, Terminator's been absolutely flogged as well, and it's still 71%. So yeah, maybe we'll get a chance to see both those films. And we'll let people know what we think. But yeah, in terms of recommendations, we've mentioned quite a few of them already. For Schwarzenegger, it's all pretty obvious. Terminator 2, Total Recall, my personal favourite, Total Recall, The Running Man, Commando, Predator. Those are all the big boys. I'm imagining people have already seen all of those, and if they have, then Last Action Hero is your next port of call, I would say. Against Stallone, I really love Tango and Cash. I can't believe that's rotten as well. Go check out Tango and Cash. It's really fun, buddy movie. I'm more of a fan of the Rambos. I know you're more of a Rocky fan.
Yeah, I like both really.
They're both great franchises and have interesting things to say about boxing / war.
Yeah.
But then you get stuff like Cliffhanger is a pretty good Stallone film, I think, from around this time as well. So if you want to get in touch with us and let us know what you think of these films, you can always do so on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Schlock Tactics. On Instagram, Amateur Geek said, I've always felt The Last Action Hero was underrated. Its skewering of action movie tropes was on point, and it was fun to see Arnie make fun of films that were his bread and butter. So we've obviously agreed with that, absolutely. Get in touch if you want to let us know what you think of these films or any other films we reviewed, or even let us know if you want us to review any films in the future. Please do subscribe to the show. We release 1 or 2 episodes a month, and if you're subscribed, you'll be the first one to know. Leave us a positive review on iTunes. 5 stars, if you wouldn't mind, would really help out the show. Make sure you go over to the YouTube channel. We have another show on there called Short Sharp Schlocks. Recently reviewed Doctor Sleep, the massively belated Shining sequel, around 39 years in the making. So go and check out what I thought of that. I'll be reviewing new and current films every now and then on there to keep you going in between these episodes. Pretty soon we're going to have our Christmas episode coming up, so get in touch if you want to suggest any films for us to do. We've got a little bit of an idea, but we'll want to hear what you guys think as well. But that has been another episode of Schlock Tactics. My name is Banash, and I've been joined once again by Mark.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And we'll be back. Bye.
Bye.